Hello and welcome to The Green Stream, a podcast brought to you by Sustainable Business Network Detroit, a network of partnerships between Southeast Michigan stakeholders, innovators, and changemakers. Each partner is on a mission to advance and amplify sustainable business practices, and we're here to learn from, share, and help activate a sustainable way forward for Greater Detroit. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review and join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And head over to our website, sbn-detroit.org. Now, let's listen in to our conversation with today's sustainability leaders.
Hello and welcome to the Green Stream. I'm Terry Barclay. My day job is President and CEO of Inforum, but I'm also the chair of the Sustainable Business Network of Detroit. And SBND's goal is really mobilizing businesses of all sizes in Southeast Michigan to make Southeast Michigan, with Detroit at its epicenter, a global leader in sustainability. And I am just delighted with the two guests that we have here with us today on the Green Stream, who are going to be talking about a very, very exciting project for our city and our region. Trey Ingram is Program Manager North America at the Toyota Mobility Foundation, and Vince Keenan is Public Engagement Specialist, Mobility Engagement Lead, and Major Projects Manager. That's three titles, Vince, I'm just saying, for the city of Detroit. So welcome, Trey and Vince. And maybe we could start. Trey, tell us a little bit about you and what you're up to.
Absolutely. Well, first, Terry, thank you so much for having Vince and I on the podcast to talk about that very exciting project happening in Detroit. But my background is actually in urban planning and transportation planning. I've been at the Toyota Mobility Foundation for about 7 years now. And I'm based down here in Dallas, Texas. So I'm a little jealous of the summer weather in Detroit right now. So I'm excited to come back to the city sometime soon. But our foundation works globally. We have staff persons obviously located down here in Dallas with me, but also in Washington, D.C., in Brussels, in Belgium, in Bangkok, Thailand, and then in Tokyo, Japan as well. So we're all over the place and working globally, and we're happy to be working in Detroit as well.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about that. So Vince, how did you get to do this work? You've got quite an interesting background.
Well, thank you, Terry. And it's an honor to be here. I'm a fan of the work that Inforum does and appreciate all you bring to the various conversations that you enhance. But it's funny to be on this call with Trey, who I think I met Trey probably a little over a year ago, and now we are on calls like this where we're working together. This is probably one of the first times that we've been interviewed. Most of the time we're interviewing innovators when they call in to ask about what's happening in the Eastern Market Sustainable Cities Challenge. My background is I was born and raised in Detroit. Started working for Mayor Duggan when he came into office. Worked for several years as district manager for District 5. Then did major projects management for the city, including the community benefits agreements for several of the major projects, and then ended up zeroing in on mobility. So I'm now the head of mobility innovation engagement for the Mayor's Office of Mobility Innovation, and our job is to make sure that as the auto industry transitions into the mobility industry, that Detroit is front and center and continues to be the center of that universe. And one of the things that had come up in relation to that was that we were looking for opportunities to think about, holistically about how transportation systems intersect with populations and the environment, and sort of what are some of the things. There's certainly things that we have to address today that are hot topic issues. There's some that we have a little bit of a heads up to move forward on and think about how to do it strategically. And that's where we ended up connecting with the Toyota Mobility Foundation, because we were looking for opportunities to begin to think about alternative fuels, to begin to think about what happens when you are successful and you start growing and you're adding more people and more transit and more freight and more pollution into the same space. How can we do this better? How can we think about this better? So we zeroed in on Eastern Market as an opportunity to really tackle carbon emissions and clean freight, because there is a growth plan, as you may be aware, for Eastern Market, an expansion eastward that's planned. And we thought, well, we have an opportunity here to think about how to do this in a better, greener, more sustainable way. And how do we add more trucks and more people without, having the same problems amplified? And that's where we came across the Sustainable Cities Challenge, and it was a great opportunity for us. And I have to say, we competed to get it. I think, Trey, there were 200 and some cities across the world that Detroit managed to be one of the three that won the challenge. But we were incredibly lucky because Toyota has been a spectacular partner and has brought to bear, the Toyota Mobility Foundation has really brought to bear a lot of their global learning around sustainability and how to tackle some of these issues. So it's not just, I feel like it's not just the $3 million that's going to go to innovators for new ideas about how to reduce carbon emissions and diesel consumption in Eastern Market. It's the knowledge base that we've tapped into and the willingness of a good partner with global solutions to help think through some of these other alternatives.
Vince, I just have to say thank you so much for being such a powerful advocate for our city and for the people in the region. We're really thankful and really proud of that. But Trey, I want to hear from your perspective about why you selected our city for the Sustainability's Challenge. We're all so excited and so proud. So what was the thinking that went in from your end?
Yeah, excellent question. We let me take a quick step back actually and say that this is the first global challenge that we've done as a foundation. We've had several different projects and engagements with different cities and levels of governments, transit agencies across the globe. But this was the first time that we wanted to create this global opportunity. So as Vince stated, last summer, we issued a call to cities, and we received over 200 entries from about 170 cities globally, of which Detroit was selected as one of the final 3 host cities. And they were selected because of their entry form that was focused on our kind of 4 key areas that we were looking at. The first of which is the challenge focus. So does the stated problem align with the stated goals of the challenge and the thematic area chosen? The second was innovation. So does the problem lend itself to being appropriate to an open innovation competition? And what that means is, was this a problem that could simply be addressed by additional funding? The answer to that would be no, because if it could just be resolved by funding, it's not lending itself to an open innovation competition. Is it something that could potentially be addressed or tackled in multiple different ways? Because that would lend itself to creative thinking from the innovation community to propose different ideas on how they might address a particular issue. The third area that we were looking at was impact. So what is the potential local impact, and does that provide an opportunity to scale learnings to other cities to broaden that impact? And then the fourth thing that we looked at that I'm sure that you probably already gathered from our conversation with Vince so far was challenge partner capacity. So what is the structure of the city entrant look like? Do they have the resources and the team dedicated to ensure project success if they were selected as one of the host cities? So at a broad level, those were the four key areas that we were looking at when evaluating all of the entries that came in.
Yeah. Interesting. I think the headline just broke this week through Crane's Detroit Business that Detroit ranked a Detroit startup ecosystem was the second fastest growing in the world, according to, some of the metrics that they were looking at. And so certainly the engine of innovation is firmly in place here. And it seems like that's one of the key elements you're looking at. I'm really curious, and Vince, you talked about this a little bit, but why freight? I mean, is there anything else more that you want to say about that aspect?
So sure. And yes, and thank you for picking up on that. So why freight? Freight is not something that people think about all the time. The general public, benefits from the fact that things get from point A to point B when they need to be. And if you look, for example, at Eastern markets, we're looking at Eastern market freight. We look at food production, and Dan Carmody is a great leader there. Katie Trudeau and the team, Brandon Sang, everybody over there that's working in the market with the growers and the providers will tell you the food comes in and people eat. So by the end of the day, the food gets to be where it needs to be, and that's critical. What we don't normally think about when there's food on the plate is how did it get there? And that's true for the plate too. That's true for the table we're sitting at, or it's true for everything. And so when we look at pollution, particulate emissions and carbon emissions, freight represents a huge percentage of it. In fact, in some cases, much larger than than your private vehicles. And so what we see when we look at freight in particular, and this is where we have some great partnerships emerging. When we started doing the Sustainable Cities Challenge, we started as a city, but we quickly connected with our partners at the state. Justine Johnson came in as the state chief mobility officer, added some additional dollars to the $3 million that was going, because if you look at freight, you have some different rules. Let's say you want to look at alternative fuels, just as an example, right? If you wanted to do hydrogen as an alternative fuel for people's personal cars, you would need a hydrogen refueling facility every place that people may go and they want to and they need to refuel, when they may run out of hydrogen and they need to get this. We're seeing that now with the implementation of EV, the sort of range anxiety and the challenges in terms of where the products are coming and where you can recharge and how long it takes you to recharge. There's a growing pains associated with that. What is different about freight, couple key pieces for us, is one, freight can be fueled all in one fueling station. If you do it strategically, you can have truck stops that are critical along the line. You can have large freight operations that have fueling stations within there. So the potential opportunity to fuel vehicles with alternative fuels is greater at scale than it is sort of where anyone is driving their car. They're also working off of fixed routes. The other thing, aside from the percentage of pollution that it represents and the opportunity to sort of work directly with the fleet operators and their fueling, is that we have freight operators in Eastern Market that are probably the best ones to talk to about this, because Most of them are farmers, they're growers, they're connected to the land. They have the sensibility about the environment. They're at the front line of a lot of these conversations, and they care what happens to the earth. So we put all those things together and started looking at where do we think we can do, we can start a conversation about alternative fuels, about alternative ways of doing cold chain supply, and knock out some of the technical things before we bring that some wins into the more public conversation about, you know, what alternative fuel vehicle you might end up with in your home. And I'll add one more thing to that to say, right now, your home options for a vehicle includes battery electric vehicles, the EVs. That's where things are going. It's a different conversation when you go to the scale of a Class 8 semi truck. The batteries don't work as well for that. So the switch from a diesel fuel vehicle to a battery electric Class 8 semi truck, very different proposition. There are some, you will read about them, but they operate best in perfect conditions and perfect weather where the temperature is exactly right, like San Diego. You get to where we are, you know, closer to the 45th parallel, it gets cold and that battery capacity drops off. And this is the other area where we think we can get way out ahead, again, in that leadership mode, and say, okay, in cold weather climates, we need to be thinking about other ways to move things around. And battery will be part of that, but it's not going to be the complete solution for us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Great points. Interesting points. A lot to think about there. Is there anything else you want to add about why Eastern Market in particular?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the people, it's the relationships, it's the vision. Dan Carmody has led the Eastern Market in a way. When you think about sustainability and green, environmental efforts in the city of Detroit, at some point, that thought leadership connects with Eastern Market. And so for us, it was an obvious, if there was a way we could do it, we wanted to do it. We found the right kind of partnership immediately. And, the other thing is that we have, it's an incredibly practical place, right? Like when we talk about these kind of solutions, Dan's not going to let, Dan and Katie and the team, they're not going to let solutions disrupt the supply chain. It's important to be green, but it's important to make sure that the bottom line makes sense too. And that kind of stewardship is critical for success. Trey and I talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe one other quick thing that I'll add on why Eastern Market, at least from our perspective at the foundation, part of the attractiveness of Detroit's initial entry was that they were able to clearly define a geographic focus area to help frame the scale of the challenge. And so for us, seeing that Vince and his team, have those established relationships with the Eastern Market Corporation, as he was talking about, and we're able to kind of hone in, that really helps the innovation community when they're proposing ideas, having that geographic scale in mind when they're proposing solutions. So from our perspective, selecting a place like Eastern Market made a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's so interesting. This at SBND, we have intersected with Eastern Market on a number of prior occasions too, whether it's green stormwater infrastructure or other things that are kind of going on there, that's sort of a hub. And I couldn't agree more with your comments about farmers. It's kind of like, that's a very practical, as we would say here in Detroit, where the rubber meets the road, right? It's the kind of thing. But Trey, I wanted to ask you, TMF works on such a global scale. And, you're aligning all of this with the UN sustainability, our sustainable development goals. Can you talk a little bit more about how you're seeing partnerships with universities, governments, nonprofits, research institutions playing out in this work?
Yeah, so as a foundation, we exist with the simple mission to enable people to go more places. We don't, stipulate the types of organizations that we work with. We're very focused on solving problems. We exist to kind of bridge that gap in future mobility and technologies between, societal needs and even the enterprise here at Toyota. So, we work with partners to implement effective local models that can be scaled globally. We do that through, research and innovation projects, demonstration projects, and mobility challenges such as the Sustainable Cities Challenge. And when we're engaging in a city for a project, we don't set out with that predetermined list of stakeholders or organizations to collaborate with. We really rely on our local partner, in this case, the city of Detroit, to take the lead on determining the best and most appropriate local collaborators to help us address the problem. So as the engagement in Detroit continues, deepens, and evolves, it's likely that our local collaborator list and folks that we're working with will increase as well. But yeah, I don't think I have a predetermined group of organizations that we'll work with. We kind of let the city in this case take the lead on figuring out who that is. Ultimately, we look for local guidance versus top-down mandates when engaging in projects. That really leads to the best success. We're here to manage things programmatically, but we really do look to our local partners like Vince to help provide the local flavor that helps to create that local ownership.
It's interesting though, because it sounds like ultimately there may be sort of a feedback loop of sorts where the learning from each one of the things that you're investing in globally can be shared, for the good of all in other locations. So those kinds of local partners, as they develop, I think can provide great platforms for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Within Toyota, we call that Yokoten, which basically, means sharing and scaling to other places that we're working in. That's absolutely our intent, to take what we learn, continuously improve our processes and share our learnings through our channels and various engagements.
So Vince, can you kind of answer the same question as it relates to the city of Detroit? I mean, how do you see partnerships evolving, with others, whether it's universities, academia, philanthropy, local, state, federal government? What are the opportunities that are there?
So I want to put this disclaimer out here that we did not coordinate that question beforehand, but I appreciate the layup. I can speak to that. Just again, the partnership with Toyota has helped us put sort of a lightning rod for some of this conversation in and around freight and clean freight in the area. That has brought us closer in partnership and coordination with the state of Michigan in particular. In fact, Tim Slusser, the Chief Mobility Officer for the city of Detroit, and Justine Johnson of the state of Michigan actually got together with a group of folks at Mackinac at the policy conference. As a result of winning, we did the announcement of the Sustainable Cities Challenge at Mackinac, but then also got some folks that were interested in alternative fuels and clean freight solutions into a room and said, look, here we are at this juncture. We've got $3 million from Toyota. We've got another 400,000 from the state of Michigan, and we've got a growing coalition of the willing. What do we have to do to move the dial? And in particular, I'll take the example of I'll take the hydrogen example because that's one of the ones that has caught attention. The state of Michigan has a hydrogen plan. Governor Whitmer, there's a strategy in place, and there's some experts around the state that are working on it. But the state is also not leading the country in hydrogen, and the United States is not leading the world in hydrogen, right? As an alternative fuel. So our chief mobility officer in the city of Detroit, Tim Slusser, has been working with Mayor Duggan, on sort of figuring out what we can do to begin to address these on a municipal level. And what we can do on a municipal level is sort of begin the conversation. So we've had some very interesting conversations locally with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers that are seeing an opportunity here in hydrogen generation, because essentially all the work that goes up to the electrolyzer is IBEW work, and then the electrolyzer chemical process takes place, and then all the work on the other side is IBEW work. So in a way, they see it as an opportunity. We see hydrogen as a potential fuel alternative, as a piece of a blended approach to a cleaner, greener, sustainable future. And we have this conversation because we have all of this thought going into the Eastern Market Sustainable Cities Challenge. At that meeting, Toyota Mobility Foundation sent up a representative in order to bring their expertise to the table. So that was fantastic there. We've had subsequent conversations with different hydrogen organizations, tapped into a broader state level effort that put together by Senator Victory and Representative O'Neill, that have been pushing for some different and more aggressive thoughts about alternative fuels. Working with Canada as an example, where Canada is a major oil producer, but it's the major oil producers in the world, the fossil fuel producers in the world, that are the ones that are looking most vigorously at alternative fuels, because they know that there's only so much oil to pull out of the ground. And so we've had some great partnerships and conversations talking about really visionary ideas, like what happens when we take one of the most trafficked freight connections between any two countries in the world, the Ambassador Bridge right now, and we more than double its capacity by adding the Gordie Howe Bridge. Do we have a goal? Can we come up with a goal? Shouldn't this be the greenest border crossing in the world? These are the kind of conversations that we see sort of prompted and scaling out. They're bringing in all kinds of different voices, and so it's a great example of leveraging the initial partnership into a whole series of conversations with different players about a greener, more sustainable future.
I cannot tell you how it does my heart good to hear you talking about hydrogen. I remember having conversations, Inforum has a Mobility Next industry group that is just growing and doing amazing things. And so some of the super smart people from the industry that are part of that group have been talking about hydrogen for more than a decade. And it's been interesting to see how EVs kind of, went to the fore. And I was always, what about hydrogen?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's places in the world, and Trey has given me examples of this, and John, who we also work with at TMF, but where you can get used hydrogen vehicles that are 3 or 4 generations old in other places where this is not. We talk about brand new technologies. This is actually not a brand new technology. It's just one that we never implemented, and it's time. We need to. And we have a great advocate in the chief mobility officer in Detroit, ready to stir the pot. A self-described disruptor. Tim is a huge hydrogen advocate, and then the state's chief mobility officer has come in from California. So Justine Johnson, she's ready to go as well. And I think the thing is that we have a hydrogen plan, but can we have more of a hydrogen plan? And can we take some of that leadership role, given our connection to, our international connection to Canada, just the ability to connect with a partner or an overseas partner locally is an amazing asset. So my hope is that people begin to see that this cleaner, greener future is a blend of all different things. That it's not just your battery, just your hydrogen, it's got to be a lot of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we shift and talk a little bit more in practical terms? So what's the plan for the 3 million deployed in Detroit? And, what are sort of the next steps? What do our listeners need to know about what the opportunities may be and how to become involved?
Yeah, so right now, the entry period for innovators is open in Detroit. So if you're an innovator or a company or a person that has an idea or a solution or a product that you feel could be applicable to the stated problem within the Eastern Market, you can go to sustainablecitieschallenge.org right now and fill out that entry form. Because later this year in the fall, we'll be selecting up to 10 semifinalists that will receive $50,000 from TMF to begin to develop out their solution, localize it. We plan to have an innovator academy at the end of this year in Detroit. We'll bring the semifinalists together.
Nice.
To do some capacity building, localization, all that good stuff. And then after that, we'll do another down selection to up to 5 finalists that will then receive an additional $130,000 that will be used for the kind of pilot demonstration and testing phase. And then ultimately at the end of the challenge in early 2026, up to 3 winners will be selected to share a pot of up to $1.5 million to continue the work. So all of the funding is structured as implementation grants. So it's all meant to be used to localize your product or your solution during the first 2 phases. And then if you're selected as a winner, to continue that implementation work. And there's a small amount of remaining funding that's just being used, for operational and supportive costs to ensure, programmatic success in Detroit. But the vast majority of the funding is reserved for those implementation grants directly to innovators.
And so, is there support for where can innovators who are thinking about this go for support to make sure that their submissions are the strongest that they can be?
If you head to sustainablecitieschallenge.org, we have multiple opportunities for potential innovators to engage with us. We have webinars that you can sign up for. We have open office hours that you can book. You can book a one-on-one with, myself, Vince, and others on the challenge team. We're here to help. We want to ensure that we have as many, quality entries as possible. So if anyone has a specific question about the entry, or they kind of have an idea that they're thinking about, we're more than open and willing to chat. So there's a tool on the website that people can use to, book specific times with us, really leading up until the end of the entry period. There's no benefit to any company or person submitting their entry early. We're not going to be reviewing them until the entry period closes. So we're really encouraging people to, take their time, think about it, engage with us, ask us questions, so that they can put their, best foot forth when they hit submit on that entry form.
Vince, anything to add?
No, Trey's got it. When I said earlier, Trey and I are on meetings all the time, one-on-one meetings.
All the time.
Sign up. Yep. No, and I can tell you the ideas that no one has explicitly sort of said, this is what I'm thinking about doing. We're still in information, but a lot of the companies are very exciting companies, and the potential innovations there. And we also recognize that $3 million is enough to get the conversation started on some of these things. Some products can be completely demonstrated and put into place in there. So there'll be a range of different things that come out of it. What's great about the state of Michigan's partnership is that, to the extent that this can inform the state clean freight initiatives over the next 10 years, that's where you start to get the money to really lever in alternative fuel infrastructure and different opportunities there. But our hope is, in fact, there's already money behind it, that the state of Michigan will look at this opportunity for these innovators coming into Eastern Market to sort of pick up some of the innovations that are working and move forward with them, and maybe even look at some of the other innovations that may not have made it to the next round of the Sustainable Cities Challenge for some reason, but could be something that fits somewhere else. So there's as part of that innovation ecosystem that you were talking about being written up in cranes that we are very proud of as a city, I think, but also all working very hard on to make sure that there's that churn takes place, that the sandbox has lots of really interesting sandcastles in it.
Terry, I think you're seeing exactly why we chose Detroit for this Sustainable Cities Challenge. Just the plethora of positive externalities that have already started to spin off of the announcement of Detroit just being selected for Sustainable Cities Challenge. So we're thrilled to see the additional support, coming from the state, and all the other things that Vince has cooking in his mind, and how to leverage this work in the Eastern Market.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Trey and Vince, any last words before we wrap up? Have we said it all?
I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and thank you for the opportunity, and to any of your anybody listening to this podcast. If you are someone, or someone that would like to plug into the Sustainable Cities Challenge, please go to the website sustainablecityschallenge.org. I said that right, Trey? I'm looking to you for confirmation. Okay.
You did.
But he normally does that part of the sales pitch. But please apply. One of the things that I think we're very proud of that we've seen thus far in the applications is that channel, that ecosystem of innovation. I am hopeful that we're going to see a really good representation from our local innovators, and that's partly because we are out there right now really pushing innovation and connecting with innovators in this sort of sea change moment for the city of Detroit. And I'm really hopeful that we'll see that in September when it's all said and done and we have all the applications in.
Yeah. Well, Trey and Vince, I just have to say thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, really, for the incredible work that you're doing. The chemistry just between you two is pretty palpable, and that bodes well, I think, for the success of this endeavor. You know, it's such a point of pride for our community that we're part of this. So thank you, Trey, for picking us and the opportunity to do this work. And Vince, I know that your work is deep and broad and is centered around this, but so much more. And so I'm hoping that we can come back and talk with you later as we're at a different point in the process and learn more about what's going on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sustainable Business Network Detroit, the Green Stream podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to follow us on sbn-detroit.org and stay tuned for more conversations on sustainability from inside and around the city.